The smell of stale coffee and desperation hung in the air of my editing bay. For a week, I'd been locked in this dark room, trying to stitch together a decent movie from the garbage I'd shot. My career was circling the drain, and Amelia, my lead actress, was the anchor tied to its leg. She was a porcelain doll, beautiful to look at, but with all the emotional range of one. I sighed, rubbing my eyes, and hit play on the raw footage again. It was a simple shot. Scene 12, take 4. Amelia walking down a long, dark hallway. Nothing to it. But I kept rewinding, watching it over and over. Something was off. I leaned closer to the monitor, my nose almost touching the screen. There. As she passed a window, her reflection in the glass, it lagged, just for a fraction of a second. Her body moved, and the reflection hesitated before catching up. A tiny, almost imperceptible stutter. What the hell? I shook my head. Must be tired. I hadn't slept more than a few hours a night for a week. It's just screen tearing, I told myself. A digital glitch. Nothing. Fucking nothing. I needed more coffee. The next day on set was the same story. Amelia was stiff, her lines delivered without a hint of life. I was on my last nerve, about to call a break we couldn't afford, when she did something different. She pulled a small, antique-looking mirror from her purse. It was silver, with intricate roses carved around the edge. She stared into it for a long, silent moment. Her whole posture seemed to change. "All right, let's try this one more time," I said, my voice flat with exhaustion. Action. It was a scene about her character receiving terrible news. Before, she'd looked mildly inconvenienced. Now, it was like watching a different person. Her face crumpled, not in an ugly way, but in a way that was so raw, so full of genuine pain, that a hush fell over the entire crew. Tears streamed down her cheeks, real, heavy tears that left glistening tracks on her skin. She didn't just say the lines, she bled them. When I finally managed to croak out, "Cut," there was a beat of stunned silence before the crew burst into applause. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over me. This was it. This was the performance that would save my ass. I watched the playback on the monitor, a grin spreading across my face. "Zoom in on her eyes," I told the camera operator, wanting to savor the moment. The image tightened on Amelia's tear-filled eyes. The lights of the set were reflected there, a distorted starburst. But for a split second, I saw something else. It was a face. A woman's face, with an old-fashioned hairstyle, staring straight out from inside Amelia's reflection. I blinked, and it was gone. Just the reflection of the camera and the crew. "Did you see that?" I asked my assistant, pointing at the screen. He squinted. "See what? The reflection? Looks normal to me, boss." I stared at the screen for another moment. Maybe he was right. Just a trick of the light, a weird reflection. It had to be. My mind was playing tricks on me. A few days later, we were shooting the scene where Amelia's character is attacked and choked. I told Mark, the actor playing the assailant, to be careful. Just place your hands on her neck, no pressure. Let her do the work. He nodded, a total pro. Action. Amelia was incredible. The fear in her eyes was palpable. Her gasps for air sounded so real, the sound guy flinched. She thrashed, her body arching. It was brutal, convincing, and utterly fantastic. "Cut," I yelled, my heart pounding. The crew clapped again. This girl was a goddamn revelation. The makeup artist, a young woman named Chloe, hurried over to touch up Amelia's face. As she reached for her neck, she let out a little gasp. "Oh my God." I walked over. "What's wrong?" Chloe pointed, her hand trembling slightly. "Her neck." I leaned in. There, on the pale skin of Amelia's throat, were 5 distinct red marks, already darkening into the ugly purple of fresh bruises. They matched Mark's fingertips perfectly. They weren't makeup. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, turning to Mark. Mark held his hands up, his face pale. "I didn't, David. I swear to God, my hands were barely touching her. It was all her." I looked back at Amelia. She wasn't wincing in pain. She wasn't even paying attention to us. She was just sitting there, a small, serene smile on her face as she gazed into that silver hand mirror. I reached out and gently touched one of the marks. It was real. The skin was warm and tender. As my eyes flickered to the mirror in her hand, its polished surface seemed to ripple for a second, like the surface of a pond after a stone has been dropped in. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of those bruises was seared into my brain. I went back to the editing bay, my hands shaking so badly I could barely use the mouse. I pulled up the high-resolution footage from the choking scene. I zoomed in, closer, until her neck filled the entire screen. Then I went through it frame by frame. My blood ran cold. The moment Mark's fingers made contact with her skin, I could see it. It wasn't just pressure. I could literally see the tiny, thread-like blood vessels under her skin straining and then bursting. It wasn't an act. It wasn't a performance. The camera hadn't recorded a scene. It had recorded an assault. The next day, the gaffer complained to me that one of the big studio lights on the overhead rig kept flickering whenever Amelia did a scene beneath it. I told him to just replace the bulb and get on with it. We were in the middle of a take, a tense dialogue scene. Amelia was, once again, brilliant. Then she went off script. She looked up at the actor across from her and added a line that wasn't in the pages. "Be careful," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with a strange intensity. "The lights in here could burn you alive." The words had barely left her mouth when it happened. A sharp, cracking sound, like a gunshot, echoed through the soundstage. The light right above the male lead exploded. A shower of hot, sharp glass rained down, peppering the spot where he'd been standing just a second before he instinctively jumped back. The set erupted into chaos. People were screaming. My assistant was yelling into his walkie-talkie. The actor was white as a sheet, brushing tiny shards of glass from his hair. Everyone was calling it a freak accident, a faulty bulb, a 1 in a million chance. But I knew better. I wasn't looking at the shattered light. I was looking across the chaotic set, at Amelia. She was standing in the shadows, away from the commotion, perfectly calm. She was holding that silver mirror, her thumb gently tracing the carved roses on its frame. And in that moment, it all clicked into place. The lagging reflection, the face in her eye, the bruises that appeared from nowhere, her ad-libbed line, and the explosion that followed it like a punctuation mark? My God, a cold dread, heavier and more real than anything I'd ever felt, settled in my gut. This wasn't acting. This wasn't art. This was something else. She wasn't performing a story. She was creating it, forcing it into existence, and we were all just characters in her script. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. Fueled by fear and black coffee, I sat at my laptop, digging. I pulled up Amelia's casting file. The section for personal items brought to set was blank. Of course it was. I started searching online, typing in every description I could think of. Antique silver hand mirror with carved roses. For hours, nothing but eBay listings and antique sites. I was about to give up when I stumbled upon a digitized newspaper article from a small-town paper dated 1948. It was about an estate auction. The estate of a legendary actress from the golden age of Hollywood, Elara Vance, who had died tragically during a film production.
I scrolled down the list of auctioned items, my heart hammering against my ribs. And then I saw it. A blurry, scanned line of text. Item 247, silver rose hand mirror, a personal favorite of the late actress. Below it was a grainy black and white photograph. It showed Alara Vance at her vanity table, holding the mirror. It was the same one, unmistakably. In the photo, Alara was smiling for the camera, a perfect studio-mandated smile. But her eyes? Her eyes weren't looking at the photographer. I leaned in, my face inches from the screen. They seemed to be looking past him, through the lens, through the decades, through the screen of my laptop. They were looking right at me. The article was a ghost, a brittle digital copy of a forgotten tragedy. Alara Vance died on the set of her final film, Crimson Veil. A freak accident, the paper said. A heavy stage light, one of the big arc lamps from that era, had broken free from its rigging, crushed her instantly.